So today we're talking about brain-based learning. So why are we doing this? Why am I not talking about writing or talking about, a lesson planner or those kinds of things? Well, here's my theory about home education. We didn't go to be trained educators in college. Most of us. Some of you did. Some of you know all this stuff because you learned about it. I did not. I was a history major. I wasn't even an English major. So when I got into homeschooling, the people I read were home educators, which makes sense because I wanted to understand the philosophy of home education. And I got a rich introduction through a variety of writers, and we'll do that on another Periscope. But you all know, you're all talking to each other about who the great home educators are. What I noticed, another home, it's Laura. Thank you, Laura. She's also a history major. She works for Brave Writer. She's awesome, Laura Fanning. Shout out for her. Take her classes. She's like adorable and a great writer. Anyway, what I didn't do is I didn't really understand sort of how education or learning functions inside of a person. And it wasn't until one of the educators I knew in California passed on some brain research to me that I started to get a feel for the difference in how to approach education, not just in terms of planning, not just in terms of picking curriculum, but like what's actually happening in the child, in the brain. And I mentioned this in the last Periscope, and you can go watch that on catch.me/BraveWriter if you want to see the scope I did the last time. But what I wanted to do today is just talk more about that. It's really important. So now we have Joni Foley saying that it's hard to go from teaching in a classroom to teaching your own child. Well, part of that is that so much of educational training is focused on organizational skills. How do you manage a class? How do you set up a schedule for your child at home? But what if we understood what's going on in the brain, in the noggin? It might shift how we hold what we do at home. Okay? So we're going to look at a whole bunch of stuff today. There's no way we can get through it all in one day. We're going to look at 12 points, 12 principles that have been identified by researchers. We're only going to do 6 of those today briefly, and I'm going to make some points that sort of intersect. A lot of this discussion I'm doing in a much deeper, more thorough way. We're going to do it in a more thorough way over in the Homeschool Alliance, which is my homeschool coaching community. You can learn more about that at coachjuliebogart.com. I don't want to turn this into an infomercial, so I'm going to keep blowing through it. All right, here we go. So point 1, I doodled. Point 1, body, brain, mind are deeply interconnected. This is somewhat of a revolution in thinking, apparently. Until the 17th century, human beings treated the body one way and the mind as a separate entity. And it wasn't until they started doing research and discovered the way the neurology works in our bodies that we suddenly discovered, these are connected. You can't just separate them. Why is that an important thing to know? Why? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to get my little notes out so that I can do it. So when we think about different learning styles, sometimes we talk about things like kinesthetic or auditory or visual. We're sort of giving a nod to the concept that learning comes through various portals in the person. It's not just through a book. It's not just through rote memorization. There are ways that information accesses us, and then it sticks. It like hooks onto our bodies, or it hooks into our brains. And maybe we're not even aware of how that happens. One of the ways that you know this is true is that you can all remember song lyrics to music you heard when you were 8, 9, 10, 15, right? You don't ever really forget the lyrics because there's a certain pairing going on of the movement and the rhyme and the way all of that is hooking in your brain. So one of the ways that I remember noticing this functionality working, and this was about the time that I was reading this brain research that this one educator gave me, is I started a little practice with my young kids. So if you've got kids between maybe ages 5 and 8, you will like trying this. We called it blast off in my family. And basically this is what we did. I had a little flip chart, you know, something like this. You could easily make one in something like this. And on each page, I had a set of skills that I wanted my kids to become familiar with. So for example, I wanted them to learn to count backwards from 10. I wanted them to learn their name, address, and phone number. So if they were ever lost, they could report that automatically. I wanted them to learn the seasons of the year by name and in the right order. I wanted them to learn the months of the year. You get the idea. You can pick any set of facts that you think would be interesting for a child who is a pre-writer to memorize. Perfect to add to morning time if you are a morning time fan, which is a great idea, by the way. So here's what you do. You drag 2 chairs if you have 2 kids, 6 chairs if you have 6 little kids, I don't know. I put my kids standing on top of a chair, okay, each one. And then I would hold up my little card and I would say, countdown. And then they would go, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off, and they would jump off the chairs, and then they would do dramatic rocket crashes on my carpet in the living room, okay? Because the blast off was so successful with the countdown, we had to do it for every single set of facts. So we did it for the months of the year. We did it for all of the seasons of the year. And you can imagine, this created bedlam of happiness for my kids, but they mastered all those facts. And it became critical when one of them, you know, got left at a park. Oh yes, this happened, and we did rescue the child. Moving right along. So, bringing the body into children's learning experiences is good education. It's not, oh, I'm just doing this to trick my child into learning. It's actually the vehicle through which they learn. It's how they take the learning in. It's how it sticks to their minds and their bodies. Okay? So that's the first one. I am flipping my next little card. You can take screenshots of these, and if you are one of those sweet followers who loves to type comments, you can type in point 1 and type in point 2, and that'll help people joining us midway to know what we're doing. So point 2, the research is on our side. Woohoo! Those are fireworks. And a star. Blast off. That's right. Isn't this how we've been home educating? We've been already paying attention to these dynamics. So let's now look at these 12 principles because I want you to see them. We're going to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 today. And then maybe on Monday or Tuesday we'll do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? So now I have to hold up my computer screen and then I will tell you where you can find this gorgeous chart. See if you can see it. Can you see it? Take screenshots. Click, 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 click. Everybody screenshot, screenshot. You got it? All right, you can look at this later. Tap away on the hearts if you're screenshot or leave me a comment saying, I did it, I did it, I did it. You got it? I only see a couple people. Okay, good. Oh, the hearts are flowing. Okay, very, very good. All right. Okay, so the first principle of the 12, thank you so much. Good job, ladies. All right, I'm going to give you the website at the end so you can do your own research. It shouldn't all come from me. So the first one is called All Learning is Physiological. And didn't we just talk about that? Kinesthetics. It's neurological. It's physiological. You can't learn on an empty stomach, right? You don't learn well when you're tired. You don't learn well right after soccer practice. Unfortunately, some kids, thank you for posting point 2. I like that. And now we have all learning is physiological. The point is, sometimes you are best in the morning and your kids aren't. Sometimes your kids are better in the evening. I had a son, Liam, who needed to learn to do his writing at nighttime. We couldn't do it in the day. We always did it once everybody else was doing their thing after dinner, and he and I would sit down together at the kitchen table and did it in the evenings. He has continued to be a night owl. His entire life, he stayed up late. In fact, to the point where he flipped at one point. He was up all night, sleeping all day. And that was in high school. And by the fourth child, I had the courage to allow that to be the case. I wasn't as nice with the first two about staying up all night, just so you know. By the fourth child, I'm like, why not? This is how his brain works. This is how he works. All right. So all learning is physiological. Number 2, the brain mind is social. What does this mean? What does it mean to be social in learning? You know, there is this thing I call the myth of independence that all homeschooling mothers are looking for. They want their kids to do schoolwork without help from them, and they believe somehow that that is a superior model to helping them. So before I start explaining why that's not the case, how about a few of you type into the comments, why do you think independence is such a high value? What's the goal of independence in learning? Why is everyone obsessed with that? Any ideas? While I'm waiting for comments to come through, because it always takes a second, I'll tell you some of the ones I've heard. So a lot of people think that independence is required so that they will succeed in college. Oh yes, parents are exhausted. It's easier for the teacher. Mom's time is limited. These are really honest. Good job. Maybe they'll own it more if they're independent. Yes, that's what Erin said. Being busy is the most popular. Absolutely. Future learning success is what Chantel says. They're going to need to be independent later. Will they be okay when they graduate, Jen asks, if they haven't learned independence at home? It's the idea that they don't need to be dependent on anyone else. That's another thing that someone just posted. Very true. So these are all the reasons that people think independence is this really holy grail of education. Here's one of the weird things that happened for me while I was raising my kids. I started grad school, and it was right at the same moment that we were in the middle of our biggest unschooling experiment, which will be a future Periscope, by the way. What did you say here? I've continued to do math with my daughter through high school. It's been the best thing for her. This is what one of the moms says. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure there will be more comments as we keep going here about partnership versus independence. So anyway, we were doing this sort of unschooling experiment, which for me meant that my kids were owning their education. I was hoping that they would do work without having to have everything prepared by me, right? And then I started grad school. And I showed up in these classrooms with these professors who had taken time to prepare lectures, readings, PowerPoint presentations, activities in the classroom. And I was like, oh, I can just learn. I don't have to work so hard. I could just learn. Oh, I'm going to give you a Periscope talk called Unschooling Undefined. That's coming, so don't worry. Keep tuning in. We'll definitely have that one. That one's going to be awesome. I'll tell you that right now. It's something I've been wanting to do forever. But anyway, so there I am in grad school, and I've got this professor who is really giving me this rich learning experience. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, am I robbing my kids of something right now? Is there some benefit to me caring and taking the time to prepare a lesson or to prepare for them, right? That's the thing I suddenly saw. It wasn't that it was the only way, it's just that it wasn't inferior. I suddenly didn't see unschooling as like the model of learning. I just saw it as one more way. And I saw preparation and support for my kids' education as really valuable. It shifted everything for me. So we're going to talk about that, but not today. All right, what's number 3? The search for meaning is innate. Okay, so we just went through all learning is physiological. The second one is the brain mind is social. And then the third one is the search for meaning is innate. Okay? So we're going to look at that now. Part of why we home educate is we want our children to have a strong sense of self, a strong identity, right? We're thinking to ourselves, what will they do with this one amazing life? how will they make their mark on the world? And people have lots of answers. You know, religious people have spiritual answers they hope their kids are taking from living in their homes. People who do not hold to a specific religious system still may have a core spirituality about making a difference in the world and mattering and using your skills and tools to create good, to create meaning. And all kids, exactly, we innately want to create and find meaning. That is a part of us. So what does that mean for learning? If you're doing a skill with your mom that feels irrelevant to your life, are you going to do it and learn it? No. But what is the meaning for a 7-year-old? You know, you have to create meaning at the 7-year-old level with your child. You can't just say, this is going to be great for when they're 18 or 27 or when you're working in a corporation at 45. Exactly. If you've got a 5-year-old, what's the goal for a 5-year-old? What creates meaning in the life of a 5-year-old? One of my upcoming Periscopes will be the best curriculum for a 6-year-old. We have a blog post by that title, and I'm going to talk about all the different ages and kind of what it looks like to create meaning for children who are young. Yes, so Uncommon Grace says, my 6 and 9-year-olds feel this way about reading, and I can't seem to get around it. Well, then what does that mean? What it means for us is first we have to accept the truth of a child not seeing the relevance. You know, if a child says to me, I hate writing, I never deny that. I'm like, that must be true. It must feel horrible to hear over and over and over again that you should value writing and yet you hate it and don't see the value. So then our task becomes re-imbuing some of these subjects with meaning from their perspective, not yours. We can't keep downloading our ideas onto our kids and then expecting them to cooperate with our agenda. That is not what good education is, and as we're finding out, it doesn't create learning, okay? So, all learning is physiological. The brain-mind is social. We need partners in our learning adventures. It isn't necessarily better to learn all by yourself. And thirdly, the search for meaning is innate. You cannot get away from it. You can't just say, I told you to do it. That's not a good enough reason for anyone to do anything. And honestly, let me go on my little side rant here about obedience in the homeschool because it was the rage when I was raising my kids. I don't want obedient kids. I didn't want them. I wanted thinkers. I wanted people who understood what they were doing and why they were doing it. And it was on me to find those reasons that helped connect my kids to the goals we had. And they had to have that goal. And guess what? It is not easy. You will find that that's something you're readdressing over and over and over and over and over throughout their lives. There is no magical cure. Having obedient children is not a cure. All you have to do is go read homeschoolersanonymous.com to see the fruit of my generation of parents who raised hyper-obedient kids, and you'll have a sense of how that project failed. So our goal is to create thinkers. Our goal is to create people who have a sense of identity. That's what we want. And they're not going to be carbon copies of us. They're going to be their own people. More on that in a future Periscope. Okay, number 4. The search for meaning occurs through patterning. Now, I personally want to do more research on what they mean when they talk about this in these brain-based systems, and I've got a bunch of literature that I'm trying to work through right now. So I hope I can talk on this one with a lot more skill in the future. But what they're talking about with patterning is this. You are creating interconnections, and you are setting patterns of thought. So when I gave the example, for example, when we used to watch movies as a family, my kid's dad always held the remote control. And as we would go, he would push pause and he'd say, what do you think will happen next? Who are we rooting for right now? Who don't we like? Why don't we like them? What do you think will happen at the end? What has to happen for this show to be over? And we would just periodically pause and ask these questions. What pattern are we instilling in our kids when we do that? Any ideas? What's the point of like asking questions in the middle of a movie? Why not just eat popcorn and watch it? I'm going to let you answer that question. Let's hear ya. What you got? Why would you ask questions in the middle of a movie? Why would you elicit responses? Connecting, curiosity, critical thinking, looking at the big picture, critical thinking, yep, to engage with the story, to identify their feelings, comprehension. These are great. My gosh, you guys are nailing it. Get them to ask their own questions. Thank you. Boom. We have a winner. Who is that? Erin Allport. She's in the Alliance. I think that's evident right there. That's fabulous. Exactly. So here's the point. The pattern we're trying to teach them is self-inquiry. I'll say that again. You can, quote this and tweet it maybe for me. The pattern we're teaching is self-inquiry. And that doesn't happen independently. It happens in partnership. So our goal when we're trying to create meaning, the search for meaning is innate, but it comes through patterning. Our goal isn't to download, our doctrines on their head or to download our perspectives politically on their heads. It's to give them the tools for self-inquiry so they can make judgments and create meaning for themselves. I remember when Johanna, when she was in high school, she wrote an essay looking at animal rights, violations of animals. It led her to become a vegan. It led her to become a vegan. In a family of 7, I had to make a separate meal for her, right? But that was the fruit of all this self-inquiry. She asked herself the logical question: if animals are being abused for us to get food, why would I support that industry by eating food and spending money on it? Fabulous. That's what we want in high school. Did I need all of my kids to become vegans? No. Did I even become a vegan? I did not, which astounded her, worried her. She couldn't understand why with the same information I didn't draw the same conclusion. More learning, more patterning. How do you coexist with people who don't draw the same conclusion as you? All happening under our roof. All happening here. So that's what we mean by that patterning. Thank you for all the hearts, everybody. I appreciate it so much. All right, number 5. Emotions are critical to patterning. Now, remember how I just mentioned the veganism? Her emotions were catalyzed by watching all of those videos and reading all that information. It horrified her. It made her feel sick at night. So she solved that problem with her own meaning-generated solution. How fabulous is that? Now, when I told my friends at the time that Johanna had become a vegan and I was suddenly, going to have to make foods that were different, literally I had 4 girlfriends tell me, I would just tell my kid, I'm shutting that down. You're not doing that in my family. I don't have time to make food for you that's different than the other family members, which shocked me because that never occurred to me even for half a second. But what I did do with Johanna is we got her a cookbook. She looked up some really great website called veganyumyum.com. And we got the cookbook and we used the site and she learned to cook. She taught herself to cook. Do you know what happened? 2 more kids in my family became vegans because of Johanna's example. They're not even all vegans today, and that's more for another time. But I was so thrilled by this success. For me, this was education. This was education. The SAT scores, who cares? This is a child understanding the truth and making judgments and figuring out how to give her life a rich texture. Okay, and then the 6th one is the brain-mind processes parts and wholes simultaneously. The brain-mind processes parts and wholes simultaneously. A lot of times when people come to Brave Writer, they ask me, are you parts to whole? Are you whole to parts? And I never really know how to answer that because I just think I'm parts and whole in parts all the time. For me, it's impossible to learn to write if all we focus on first is grammar and mechanics, because what's the point of writing? The point of writing isn't knowing mastery over the mechanics. It's having something to say. On the flip side, if all we're working on is what we have to say, we'll always have to pay people to transcribe our thoughts. And do we really want to do that? No. We want to make a shortcut between the writing and the mechanics and be able to be in possession of both. But you can work on both simultaneously, just not necessarily together at the beginning. I see it sort of like a bicycle, you know? You push the pedal down on original writing and let it rip. Lots of risk, mess, goof ups, misspellings, no punctuation, capitalization. Oh, and now we're going to look at somebody else's writing, and all we're going to focus on is capitalization, punctuation, spelling, mechanics. Oh, but now we're going to work on original writing. Oh, and pretty soon as this gets more fluent and this gets more confident, oh, the speed increases, and now we're flying down the road, mechanics and original writing all going together, right? That's how it works. So here we are, bringing these two together in a meaningful way after we've worked on them independently but simultaneously. Independently but simultaneously. That's the idea here. Whole to parts, parts to whole. I'm going to give you a little example with grammar because the way we do grammar in Brave Writer is totally different. So I like grammar instruction to do two things. To come from within a text that has meaning already, a meaning-rich text. Something you're interested in reading, not these phony constructed sentences that are plucked from the air and plunked down into a workbook. I'm talking about sentences you enjoyed reading the first time you read them, okay? Like taken out of a wonderful living literature book, you know, a la Charlotte Mason. So that's what we want first. We're going to find meaning-rich context for this grammar instruction. And we're going to look at it and talk about the role of these various pieces. What does a period actually do? What is a noun? How come an adjective works here? Those are kind of like inquiry questions. But then when we actually teach the grammar part of speech or point, I try to find a way that it upgrades the energy of the writing. In other words, we talk about grammar for power more than for accuracy. Because accuracy in a native speaker is intuitive, it's natural. You already know how things should sound. That isn't going to change with adding a whole bunch of rules and abstraction for an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old. It's not going to change. They can't receive the information. It's like Teflon, ba-boom. Because when they hear the sentence, they immediately think in their ear, oh yeah, that sounds right. That's all they think. Mad Libs are great, by the way. Yes, a perfect way of this exact idea. Perfect example of what I'm talking about. So here's the thing. When we do talk about grammar, if we can think of a way to flip the script and use it to engage a reader, now we've got them in the meaning quest. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. I always ask moms who call me on the phone and ask me for my take on grammar. If I were to ask you what part of speech the word table is, what would you say? So I'm going to ask you, what part of speech is the word table? Yes, grammar for power more than accuracy. Very good. Thanks, Jeanette. What part of speech is the word table? Anyone want to try? Noun. Anyone else think it's a noun? Noun. How many nouns? Lots of nouns? Noun, depends. Or verb. Oh, exactly. We only know what the part of speech is by context, right? We don't know part of speech apart from context. So it could be a verb. If I say I'm eating food on the table, it's a noun. Okay, it's a table. Nothing interesting about that. We all get some kind of blank idea in our head, right? But what if I say, let's table the discussion? Well, now it's a verb, as many of you have just pointed out, correct? So it's a verb in that context, and now it's already a more interesting word as a verb than it was as a noun. Imagine your child is writing a piece, and the main character has to walk from the front door to the mailbox. And you start thinking, well, how is this human being going to get from the front door to the mailbox? Well, she could walk, she could run, she could skip, or she could hopscotch. But is hopscotch a verb? Don't we usually say, I played the game of hopscotch? My friend and I played hopscotch. But what if we said, I hopscotched to the mailbox? Instantly more interesting than walk, run, skip, right? Because we've taken a noun, we have subverted the grammar expectations of the reader, which immediately makes the writing more interesting. So if you know grammar, the whole goal is to manipulate it. It's to mess with it. It's to subvert reader expectations. You know, now and then, not every sentence is supposed to completely deconstruct language. That's not my point. I think you know that. But what I'm saying is, your kids will hold on to the idea of a noun or a verb or an adjective when it is tied to how it impacts a reader, more than if you just need them to rotely memorize information. Does that make sense? I think some of you, yeah, somebody here put surprise. Oh, Jeanette did. Yes, because the element of surprise is the least taught element of writing, and yet the most important one in every piece, every kind of writing. Academic writing depends on a surprising thesis and surprising new data. You know, creative writing depends on surprising context, surprising narrative, surprising setting. So anything that brings surprise, language choice, is right up there at the top. Okay, let's see. Let's keep going. So we're going to continue with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 next week. But I have a couple more things to say. So we already looked at the 12 principles. And we had point 1 and point 2. Should we review? We should review because I went on for so long. All right, point 1. Body, brain, mind are deeply interconnected. We've really seen that now, right? Point 2. The research is on the side of homeschoolers. This is how we operate. We're all about this stuff. And point 3. Ready? Complex learning depends on relaxed alertness. Okay, everybody, let's do this together. Ready? That's what we want before we start learning. We want to pause. We want alertness, but we want to be relaxed. Remember how I brought up grad school? That was the state I was in for 4 years. It was awesome. I would go in. I was so relaxed. Somebody had taken care of the details, and all I had to do was be alert. It was glorious. I could study, I could take notes, I could come home, and somebody else told me who was smart enough to tell me what I needed to study. It was wonderful. Can our children learn if they're under stress, if they are being threatened with punishments, if they are being told they will never amount to more than a hamburger slinger at McDonald's? No. They can learn when there's space to learn. So here's my charge to you this week, and I'm going to ask you next week, and I want to hear what you did. When you see the stress level go up in your family, walk away from it. Change the dynamic. One of the ways we change the dynamic in Brave Writer is we have poetry tea times. We just get out the dishes and we read poetry and we say, this day is done. We're going to do something different. You can do it by getting outside. I remember one time when things were crazy going on in my house. 5 kids bouncing off the walls, you know, with all their various learning styles. And I just couldn't handle another minute. And I just sat down in the middle of the room and I was silent. I did nothing. I just sat. And then they all started like, what's mom doing? I said, I just need a break. I am just going to sit here for a little while till we're all ready to re-embark on whatever it was we were doing. You know, sometimes you gotta admit, this is crazy. I can't handle this anymore. I need to breathe. I need to lay down. I need to do a stretch. You know, you can do that with your kids. Oh my gosh, everybody's bouncing off the walls. Let's stretch. Let's bend over. Let's do a deep breath, everyone all together. You know? Relaxed alertness. Teach your children how to regain control of themselves. Don't shame them. Don't blame them. Don't threaten them. All that does, according to the brain research, is shut down the learning. Okay? And you don't want to shut down the learning. You didn't take on this job so that your kids won't learn. You took it on because you want them to learn. So will you do that this week? What I want you to do is, when that chaos comes, and I guarantee it will, because it's a whole week and you got a whole parcel of kids. The moment it comes, I want you to try a new strategy. You get to make it up. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe you'll just start singing, from Frozen at the top of your lungs, and everyone will join in. You'll plug in the music and you will dance. You will serve everybody turkey sandwiches so they have protein. Change the dynamic before you return to the learning. Do not use yelling, shaming, or blaming, or threatening, okay? Because the brain research says it kills learning. That's why. That's why. Of course, you want to have a good relationship with your kids. But you know what's really weird? When I say that, people still yell at their kids. Because the truth of the matter is, we want a good relationship, but we want them to turn out more than we want a good relationship. That's actually the truth. We want them to be successful adults more than we want to stay connected to them. And the way I know that is by all the behaviors that everyone engages in with their children, which is shaming, blaming, and threatening. But if you have maybe a higher meaning for why you don't shame and blame than just your personal comfort level of relationship, maybe you'll be more motivated. Maybe if you know it knocks out your primary goal, which is learning and having them grow into this awesome human being, you'll be less likely to indulge in these behaviors that don't work. Okay? We'll talk more about that another week. Okay. Point 4. Ready? Let's see if I can read it backwards. Rigorous thinking, Socratic method, problem-based learning work. What is this? What is this? Well, here's what it is. Switching my page. Our kids have a profound boost of intrinsic motivation when they are treated as the person who has something to say. They have a profound boost of intrinsic motivation when they are treated as though they have something to say. In other words, no more downloading your great ideas on their heads. This is, you are way more curious about what's going on in their brains than in your brain. Here's the thing. You already know what you think. You've been thinking it forever. You've been born into this world for a long time. You have a husband or a boyfriend or a mother or a best girlfriend who will be interested in your thinking. Who's going to be interested in your children's thoughts? It should be you. And what's more interesting than their thoughts is what they're doing with their thoughts. So if you have a child who is deeply engaged in World of Warcraft, it is incumbent on you as a fabulous home educator to be interested. You don't have to learn how to play it, but you do have to be interested. I remember when Liam was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. I am not. To this day, I am not. And he was kind of an introverted kid. His best friends were animals. He did not have a lot of little guy friends. And so guess who his partner had to be? It was me. I had to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards every week for a year. And this is what I did. I held the cards in my hand, and every time we played, I was like, now what do I have to do again? Because I was so bad at playing, and my brain was so disinterested, I couldn't hold on to the rules. It was embarrassing. But he taught me. And by the end of that year, I had played a freaking ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was the highlight of his year because he had a partner doing the thing he loved. Noah is a huge gamer. That's my oldest child. For those of you who don't know, I'm Julie Bogart. I have 5 kids. I homeschooled for 17 years. My youngest is 19. She just turned 19 last weekend. My oldest is 28. And they're all adults doing their own various things. And Noah, my 28-year-old, is the one who did all my podcasting with me. And we're getting ready to start again. He's in town and he has time and we're very excited. So that will begin again. But anyway, Noah is a huge gamer. And as a young child, he was so excited about playing games, board games, video games, dice games, card games, and there were no one to play with. I'm telling you, talk about breaking a mother's heart. All of the groups he was in, no one had the patience to try and learn the games the way he wanted to. And his younger siblings weren't as smart as him yet because they were younger. So he kept trying to find like the ideal person. So we worked really hard at it. Their dad taught them chess, and all the boys learned to play chess, and they played that together. And he started building, like they made a 3D chess set, the three older kids, and that was really compelling for a while. They made their own Monopoly. They made their own Clue set, like literally built it themselves because they love games so much. And as Noah got into high school, he found like a gaming community and he started going to that, but they weren't totally his kind of people. And we had him go part-time to Lakota West High School in our area for math. And he met a kid in his class who liked gaming. And this kid is his friend to this day. And now Noah, as a 28-year-old, has a gaming community. It took literally 25 years. I say this to encourage you. Sometimes what they love takes time for it to reach its fruition. But Noah, everywhere he drives, he has 20 games in the back trunk of his car. And he'll post on Facebook every so often. He'll say, I'm up for gaming. Who wants to meet me at XYZ coffee shop? And then people are like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And then they all go and play games. Anytime Noah comes to our home, he sets up games and we play. I'm sharing this with you because if we are interested in our children's thoughts, we will participate in their world, even if it's the world that isn't interesting to us. We can go make friends and do things that are interesting to us with our girlfriends. You can join a garden club. You can be in a quilting group. You can join a book club. Don't force your children to have your interests. In fact, let me tell you this little secret. If you expect your kids to be interested in all the things you're teaching, and yet you don't show interest in what they are caring about, why should they listen to you? Why should they? How wrong is that, right? So if you want reciprocity, get in there, be interested in them. And then you can come back and be like, hey, how about this? Well, let's watch this together. And they'll be willing to try it because you tried it for them. Okay, so rigorous thinking, Socratic method. Do you know what that is? The Socratic method is basically a system of inquiry. Remember we talked about teaching them to have self-inquiry? That's what you want to do. You want to facilitate the ability to ask quality questions without knowing what the outcome of that discussion is supposed to be. It's not asking a question in order to get them to give you a certain answer. It's asking a question that helps them explore it and engage it at a deeper level. And they are asking and you're talking back and forth inductively. Look up Socratic method. We can talk about that another time. Yeah, there are no right or wrong answers, Joni. Exactly. And lastly, they talked about problem-based learning. And that's basically solving a real-world problem. You know, I loved how when my daughter Katrin took sewing classes, she learned so much about math that I didn't teach her because of sewing, not because she was in a workbook. Somebody just mentioned that they love the boomerang questions. For those who are new, Brave Writer has products that are designed for language arts and are paired with living literature. The boomerang is our product for high schoolers, and we write 9 what we call think piece questions for each novel. And those are meant to provoke conversation with the parent and writing. So excellent. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, let me make sure I've covered all the things I wanted to. Awesome, I have. So we are winding up. That was a long Periscope. I did not mean for it to take this long. The 2 websites that I visited that gave me my little brain research today was funderstanding.com and canelearning.com. Go, 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 go. Make sure you go read those sites. They have a lot of really good information. Did you screenshot? Take a big screenshot. There you go. Now, we are at the end of this Periscope. So I have a couple things I need to tell you. Thank you for posting it in the links. That's very in the comments. It's very helpful. Funderstanding.com, canelearning.com. Thank you for sharing that. You appreciate what I'm sharing. I'm so motivated. Literally last night, I was like, oh my gosh, I have topics. Apparently, I was just waiting for someone to invent Periscope because this is really fun for me. Here's the thing. On Monday, before Periscope, bombed into my life, thank you, Pam Barnhill, I signed up to be a speaker at the Home Education Council of America. And so Monday at 4, I'm doing a live free webinar on their site about poetry tea time. We're going to see what it's like to read poetry with your kids, and I'm going to read some poetry and talk about how you talk about poetry. If you would like to go, it's their Not Back to School conference. It's Monday at 4 p.m., the same time this started, and this is the website, hecoa.com. Make sure you type that into the comments, someone, hecoa.com. You sign up for free, you watch me for free. It's going to be so much fun. So what does that mean about our little Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing? Well, I'm just going to scope on Monday morning. So I haven't picked the time. It'll be spontaneous. You can watch it live or on the replay. I know a lot of you will be home educating, as you should be. And so if you need to catch me on the replay, that's fine. And as a result of that knowledge, I should add, when you watch replay on Periscope, you can still tap the little hearts and give me love. And the more you do that, the more that people know the value of that particular session. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, hecoa.com. Poetry Tea Time with Julie. My doodles are really lame, but it was fun. I bought Sharpies just for Periscope. Okay, lastly, I would love you to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram, my handle is Julie Brave Writer. On Twitter, it's just Brave Writer. Instagram, I try to post personal stuff in addition to Brave Writer, like my family, the man I'm dating. We're going out tonight. See, I'm wearing nice earrings. So you can follow me on Instagram, and I would love to post the things that you are doing in your homeschools. And I use the repost app. So, make sure you tag hashtag Brave Writer, and I'll find you easily. We also are just about to hit 22,000 on Facebook. So help me make that happen. We love our Facebook community. So much good stuff goes on there. So definitely go and follow me on Facebook. So lastly, I am just going to review what we covered today, the 4 main points. Are you ready? The first point. I have to go back to my cards. Sorry, I'm hopeless without them. All right. The first point is that body, brain, and mind are deeply interconnected. The second is that the brain research is on our side. The third is that complex learning depends on relaxed alertness. And point 4, rigorous thinking, the Socratic method, and problems-based learning work. All right. I look forward to seeing you next week. Sign up at hecoa.com to see me do my poetry tea time. And we will reconvene Monday morning and again on Wednesday. And who knows, if this is fun enough, maybe I'll just do it every day. But I love you all. Thank you so much for sharing with your followers and turning up today. This was a great scope. Bye.